They never saw it coming. While the world watched silently, Captain Ibrahim Traoré made a move that shook global powers. He launched Africa's first independent defense industry. No more begging for weapons. No more waiting for help. This historic moment isn't just bold. It's revolutionary. Watch what happens next. Something big is happening in Burkina Faso, and it's not just talk. Under the leadership of Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the country is turning the tide and doing something many thought impossible, building its own military without waiting for foreign aid. Recently, Prime Minister Jean-Emmanuel Hidalgo shared a piece of news that is catching the attention of the world. Because Faso is starting its own homemade defense industry. This means they are preparing to produce and repair their own weapons right there on Burkina Faso soil. And it's not just a nice idea. It's already happening, and honestly, it's happening at a much faster pace than anyone expected. Captain Traoré is not one of those leaders who just talks big to get applause. He is doing the work, step by step, taking the country out of the shadow of foreign control and pushing Burkina Faso towards true independence. For years, African countries like Burkina Faso have been in a difficult situation. They had to ask for weapons, equipment, and even permission to defend themselves. And when they said no to those same powers, that was it, the support was cut off. It's like owning a house, but you can only defend your door if someone from the outside gives you the key. But now things are changing. When the traditional supplier said, "Sorry, no weapons for you," countries like China, Russia, Turkey, and Iran stepped in. That helped for a while, but it still meant that Burkina Faso was dependent on someone from the outside. And that's not real freedom, because if you can't make your own tools, someone will always have the power to stop you. That's why this new defense industry is so important. It's not just about weapons, it's about control. It's about dignity. And that's exactly what some global powers don't want to lose. They've long had their eyes on the Sahel region, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, because of its valuable resources and strategic position, and they've done everything they can to stay in control, including maintaining military bases there and pressuring leaders behind the scenes. One of the boldest moves came in 1996, when they got African countries to sign something called the Pelindaba Treaty. On the surface, it looked like a peaceful commitment not to build nuclear weapons, but in practice it was a clever way to ensure that African nations would never be on equal footing with countries that do have them. More than 50 African countries signed the treaty, perhaps without realizing how much power they were giving up. If you've never heard of the Pelindaba Treaty, now's a good time to do some research and see if your own country has signed it. You might be surprised. Now people are starting to wonder, shouldn't the alliance of the Sahel states of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger rethink this decision? Because if a nation can't fully protect itself, can it really be free? Some wonder whether Captain Traoré can really make all this happen. But maybe that's not the right question. Maybe the real question is, how will all these changes impact the people of Burkina Faso in their daily lives? Will they feel safer? Will there be more jobs, better lives? If you're still watching this video, it's because you're enjoying it. Why not give it a like? Have you clicked? Then let's continue. There's often something invisible pulling the strings in many countries, a kind of quiet control that's not always easy to see. But in Burkina Faso, things are taking a different direction, a whole new path for a landlocked country that has faced constant attacks and deep crises for years. This change is huge. Yet out of all the chaos and suffering, a new force is emerging. Burkina Faso is beginning to build a new version of itself, bold, proud, and based on unity. A vision that matches the Pan-Africanist dream of Africans standing together, proud and making their own decisions. Recently, Prime Minister Jean-Emmanuel Traoré took the stage in the capital Ouagadougou and gave a speech that wasn't just sweet talk, it was a real plan, a plan to manufacture the country's own weapons right there at home. No more relying on other people's scraps. He spoke with a calm but firm energy. We are tired of begging. If we want to be free, we have to protect ourselves. And if we want to protect ourselves, we have to make our own weapons. That is what the people want, and that is what we are going to do. And this is not just another government promise that will soon disappear. This is a turning point. Since 2015, Burkina Faso has been in the midst of a deadly war against armed extremist groups. The violence has claimed thousands of lives, forced millions to flee their homes, and left large swathes of the country outside the government's control. For a long time, they looked to France for help. French soldiers arrived with their equipment and their interests, but the violence did not stop. If anything, it seemed to get worse. People began to feel that foreigners were using their country as a chessboard, moving pieces that did not really help the people. Then came Captain Ibrahim Traoré. He took power in 2022 and wasted no time. In early 2023, he told the French soldiers to pack their bags and leave. He made it clear that the future of Burkina Faso would be written by its own people, not by those watching from afar. And now the country is building its own defense industry. Instead of waiting for weapons to arrive from some distant capital, they are starting to produce their own rifles, drones, and armored vehicles, all made by locals who really know what they are up against. But this moment is not just about weapons. It is about turning the page. For too long, African countries have been forced to buy everything from abroad. They mined gold, oil, sold land, and used the money to import what they needed. That was the old playbook. Traoré is tearing up that playbook. And here's the part that really makes the difference: how they're going to pay for it all. Normally, a project this size would mean loans, aid packages, or deals with international powers. But Traoré isn't going down that road. He's refusing any aid that comes with hidden strings attached. No deals with the IMF, no handouts from Paris or Washington. Instead, he's banking on what Burkina Faso already has in abundance: its wealth, its land, its people, and especially its gold. Burkina Faso is one of the continent's largest gold producers, but for years big foreign companies would come in, take the gold, and leave only crumbs behind. People would see the mines, but they never saw the money. That, according to Traoré, is over. At the end of 2023, something important happened in Burkina Faso that almost no one noticed. But this could change everything. The government has authorized the construction of the country's first gold refinery. Now, instead of sending raw gold to other countries to be processed and letting them keep all the money, Faso is keeping it at home. Finally, the gold stays in the country, and so does the profit. This refinery is not just a pretty building full of machinery. It is part of a much bigger plan. Along with new rules for foreign mining companies, it is helping to fund the country's military projects. Captain Ibrahim Traoré made it clear: our gold is ours. We are not here to enrich others. We are building our own future. And that future does not involve waiting for anyone else's approval, because Faso has stopped asking for permission and has started doing things its own way. True independence is not about flags and speeches. It is about feeding your people, defending your borders, and paying your own bills. And it is not just gold that is driving this movement. The government has also turned its attention to the land, to agriculture and livestock, to strengthen the country from the inside out. In 2023, they launched the Presidential Initiative for Food Self-Sufficiency. It sounds fancy, but the idea is simple: grow enough food to not depend on anyone else. Then came the Agro-Pastoral Offensive, which is a campaign to grow more food and raise more animals. The results: in just 1 year, Burkina Faso harvested around 6 million tons of cereals. That is not just a number, it is meals, it is income, and it is power. They are selling off their surplus, collecting taxes on the profits, and pumping the money back into building a stronger military. But remember, this isn't just about weapons and defense systems. It's about how the country is run from top to bottom. Traoré and his team are not living like kings. No outrageous salaries or lavish perks. Traoré is still earning the same salary he earned as a captain. And while rich countries typically offer aid with strings attached, like setting up military bases or strict rules, Burkina Faso is saying no thanks. Instead, it has set up something called a National Solidarity Fund, which is funded by people who choose to donate, and this money is going to help families forced to flee their homes and to strengthen the country. This approach is sending a clear message: Africa does not need to kneel before foreigners to survive. They are making the dream of leaders like Thomas Sankara, Kamuma, and Patricia Lumumba come true. African countries standing up, controlling their economies and deciding their own destinies. Of course, building a military industry seems at first glance to be all about weapons, but for the people of Burkina Faso, it means much more. It means families can return to their homes, communities can stay safe, and life can finally return to normal. And beyond security, there are jobs, lots of jobs, engineers to design new tools, technicians to keep everything running, miners to extract the raw materials, workers to assemble everything. For many, it may be their first steady job, their first real chance to build a better life. By keeping money flowing into the country, instead of watching it disappear into the pockets of foreign companies, Burkina Faso can finally invest in what it has needed for years. Roads, schools, health clinics, clean water, real progress. This new refinery and agricultural programs are just the beginning of a system where everyone gets a share of the pie, not just the most powerful. As Traoré said, this fight is about more than bullets and borders. It is about protecting who we are, preserving our culture, our dignity, and the right to live on our own terms. Meanwhile, in other parts of Africa, foreign armies continue to prowl. Drones are flying over cities. In Somalia and Nigeria, French troops are still stationed in places like Cheb and Ivory Coast. Burkina Faso's story is shining a light on something uncomfortable. Many African leaders still rely on foreign troops to make them feel safe, as if they are afraid to stand on their own 2 feet. But these troops are not really protecting the African people. They are protecting foreign interests. They are keeping old systems going, systems where Africans are told what to do, what to buy, and who to trust. Schools and universities across the country are preparing to train a new generation of thinkers and builders. Instead of repeating old lessons, students will be immersed in science, engineering, and technology to compete with the best minds in the world. They are not learning just to get good grades. They are learning to lead. And as Burkina Faso begins to keep more of its money at home, a bigger plan is underway. That money will not just sit in banks. It will be used to fix roads, improve hospitals, and give schools the boost they have needed for decades. For a long time, the country had to borrow from foreigners, and that always came with strings attached. Now they want to build things their own way, with their own rules. And that's already starting. The gold refinery project and the agricultural boost are paving the way, and the benefits won't just go to the rich or powerful. They're designed to lift everyone up, from the city worker to the farmer in the countryside. Captain Traoré said something very powerful recently. This fight isn't just about land or power, it's about people being proud of who they are. It's about giving people the freedom to live with dignity and shape their own future. And a big part of that future is the defense industry they're building. Not because they want to go around fighting, but because they want to protect their homes, their families, and their own independence. This military industry is like a backbone. It supports everything else. But while Burkina Faso is taking bold steps, not everyone on the continent is doing the same. Foreign drones can still be seen flying overhead, and Western military bases, planted in places like XD, Ivory Coast, Nigeria, and Somalia. It is as if Africa is being used as a giant game board, where the great powers move their pieces to suit their own interests. But these soldiers from distant lands are not really there to help. They are not building peace, they are maintaining control. It keeps Africa in a position of need, always one favor away from a handout, always one loan away from more debt. This system is a remnant of the colonial era and still lives on like an old chain that no one is willing to cut. Traoré saw this clearly and made a different choice. He sent the French troops away, and instead of going it alone, he sought partnerships with countries like Russia and Turkey. Not because they are perfect, but because they offered partnership without acting like colonial masters. He also joined forces with Mali and Niger to form a new alliance in Sahel. This group is not looking for Western approval, but for African countries to support each other and build strength together. Yet many African leaders are not ready to take that leap. Why? Because fear and selfishness are a dangerous combination. Some presidents have grown accustomed to the comfort of Western deals. They live in palaces paid for by loans, while their people struggle to have enough to eat. They agree with everything the old powers say and call anyone who disagrees a dangerous rebel. Traoré did not mince words. When he spoke at the Russia-Africa Summit in 2023, he spoke the truth, loud and clear. African leaders should not act like puppets every time a foreign power pulls the strings. His words were harsh and should remain in the minds of every leader who still allows foreign troops to settle on African soil. Because these foreign forces do not bring calm, they bring chaos. Just look at Burkina Faso. French troops did not stop the rebels, but when they left, something else happened. The people woke up. They realized they did not need to rely on outsiders to protect themselves, that they could do it themselves. Other countries are taking notice. From the Badlands to the Central African Republic, places that once felt powerless are finding new strength after cutting ties with foreign military powers. And there is a big lesson in this. Real security does not come from someone flying in to fix things. It needs to be built from the inside out by the people who live there, who know the risks and are willing to defend their homes with their own hands. Of course, the road ahead will not be easy. There will be challenges, some technical, some political, and certainly some financial. Burkina Faso still needs better roads, stronger buildings, and more equipment to achieve its ambitious goals. And yes, the threat from extremist groups is still very real, but this is not just Burkina Faso's story. It's something bigger. It's a signal to the entire African continent that the old narrative, the one that said Africa can't stand on its own 2 feet, is becoming outdated. In a place often portrayed as fractured and suffering, Burkina Faso shines like the last flame before dawn. Its new defense industry is not just a factory that makes weapons, it's a message that says, yes, we can build, yes, we can protect ourselves, and no, we don't need permission. African leaders, take note. The era of begging is over. The era of building has begun, and right now the people of Burkina Faso are showing everyone exactly how to do that. But even as this new energy grows, a long shadow still stretches across the continent, from the dry heat of the Sahel to the dense jungles of Central Africa. Foreign armies, mainly from the West, still set up camp in the name of keeping peace and helping. Countries like France and the United States. For decades, Africa's defense systems have been tied to foreign powers, dependent on aid, controlled by outside interests, and shaped by those who never had the continent's best interest at heart. But that era just ended. In a move that has left Western powers stunned and global analysts scrambling, Captain Ibrahim Traoré officially launched Africa's first fully independent defense industry, and nothing will ever be the same. From the heart of Burkina Faso, Traoré unveiled a state-of-the-art facility that will design, produce, and distribute African-made weapons, vehicles, and tactical gear. But this isn't just about manufacturing. It's about sovereignty. It's about a continent finally stepping into its power, refusing to be dictated to or disarmed by those who have profited from its insecurity. During his announcement, Traoré didn't speak with arrogance. He spoke with clarity. We will no longer be a continent that fights with borrowed tools, he said. We will defend our people, our borders, and our future on our terms. The defense industry, named Burkina Shield, isn't just a national project. It's a continental invitation. Traoré has opened the doors for partnerships with neighboring African countries, offering access to affordable, high-quality defense equipment built by Africans, for Africans. He's building more than weapons. He's building a united front. Western media was quick to react. Some called it dangerous, others a destabilizing shift. But for millions across Africa, it was a moment of pride. Social media erupted with celebration. Young Africans shared the launch like a badge of honor. Finally, a leader had taken the step that many talked about but never dared to make. And the message is loud and clear. Africa will no longer ask for permission to protect itself. Traoré's vision for Burkina Shield goes beyond military strength. It includes engineering programs, youth training centers, and scholarships to develop the next generation of African defense innovators. He's not just building weapons, he's building minds, confidence, and national pride. But with such bold action comes risk. Already, international pressure is mounting. Sanctions are being whispered. Threats are quietly forming. Yet Traoré remains unshaken. He knows that any great change comes with resistance, and he's prepared to face it all. In a time where African leaders are often expected to follow, Traoré has chosen to lead, and not just for Burkina Faso, but for every nation tired of being told to stay in line. With one move, he shifted the balance of power and lit a fire that may soon spread across the continent. This isn't just about defense, it's about dignity. It's about declaring once and for all that Africa has the right, the skill, and the will to stand on its own. Captain Ibrahim Traoré didn't just shock the West, he woke up a sleeping giant. And now, the world must watch as Africa arms itself, not for war but for independence, protection, and the future it deserves.